Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Ari Whitten, and today I have with me Dr. Grace Liu, who is a doctor of pharmacy. She's an AFM CP, which I will let her describe what that is. She is a functional medicine practitioner with an international functional medicine practice that includes nutritional consultations, integrative laboratory analysis, and personalized counseling. She's a gut expert in particular, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. She's the founder of the Gut Institute. She's a formulator of probiotics. She's a host of the Microbiome Medicine Conferences and the Heal SIBO Summit. And I recently connected with her on the topic of coronavirus, of COVID-19, that everybody's talking about right now. And she let me know about some fascinating research about how the gut microbiome ties into immune health. And I basically said, I'd love to have you on the podcast to talk about all this stuff. And in particular, there was some stuff she mentioned about the gut-lung axis. Now, I had heard of the gut-brain axis, the gut-skin axis, the gut mitochondria axis in particular is an area where I know a lot about, but I had never come across anything about the gut-lung axis. And I started to look into that. And I just thought it was mind-blowing and fascinating stuff. So I'm excited for this conversation, and I'm really excited to have you on the show, Dr. Liu.
Thank you so much, Ari.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah. So, well, let's get into it. So tell me about the broad landscape of the gut immune axis, the gut lung axis. What's kind of like, how would you describe what's going on there to the person who knows nothing about that subject?
So we know from a lot of research and academic articles, our immune system, our immunity is 80, 90%, it's estimated to be in our gut, particularly the small intestines. There's a variety of anatomical structures known as Peyer's patches, M cells, a whole host of macrophages. These are our sentinels, kind of like our FBI SWAT team, all that, right? And our human immune system is so interesting. If you believe in evolution, we have been here for millennia, and there was a divergency somewhere along the line when mammals were developed. Mammals happened, right? They had internal fertilization, and instead of aborting and kicking out a fetus, they identified it as self, and the immune system learned and trained itself to not kick it out, whereas it would for a parasite that got stuck in the system or elsewhere. So instead of laying eggs, humans and mammals had babies that were internal. And this changed our immune system at that point. We went from, teleos fish and egg laying, and then suddenly we're mammals, right? And our immune system really had a big deal about that. And there was a lot of other changes along the way. Our brains grew bigger. Okay, this is going back kind of a ways, right? And our food system changed. We can track back to petrified poop and see these changes. Actually, our microbiome shifted, and with more foods that grew our brain, like omega-3s and cooked barbecued starches, barbecued meats, there was an increase in bifido, lacto, and butyrate producers and many other species that were seen in these they're like petrified, remains of feces. And we know a lot about the immune system now, and they've done testing. When they do germ-free, they take away our known healthy bacteria, the microbiome, the 100 trillion, microbes and bacteria. These animals end up, not being able to socialize. All their organs are tiny, small heart, small everything. And they don't act very normal. They're not fearful. They run around and they don't act normal at all. So not having a commensal, our real keystone bacteria that trains our immune system makes a lot of changes, and it can add to disease burdens. So there was actually a PNAS article like in 2011. It was kind of a seminal article. They showed that by altering the microbiome using different antibiotics and testing with different infectious agents like Legionella and other things, these researchers showed that the lung susceptibility to influenza virus was dependent on the microbiota and whether the keystone species are there or not. And with even coronavirus, because it's very common. Coronavirus is all over our earth, and they infect, poultry, pigs, all our, domesticated animals can get infections.
Just for clarity on that point, some people may be under the impression that there's only one coronavirus. It is this coronavirus outbreak, COVID-19. And just for clarity, basically what you're saying is there are many types of coronaviruses within this family, and this this new outbreak is one specific strain of a coronavirus.
Right, and we had others. 2002. We had pandemics, and then SARS, 2012, and other years. So this has been around, right? But there are coronaviruses in our animals, and we can learn a lot about the way the clinical course is for animals. And then we can learn a lot about how animals using probiotics, it's so amazing that, their health can be protected, even symptom-free. Like there's a common diarrhea virus that affects pigs. And just using probiotics, they can avert nearly all signs and symptoms of diarrhea, because diarrhea will kill them. It's so lethal, that type of coronavirus. Just as COVID-19, it is apparently pretty lethal. Let's say our normal flu is 0.1, 0.2% lethal. This is magnitudes above that, 1%, 2%, depending on where the region, the hospitals, whether they have ventilators or not. It can be 2%, 3.5, 4.7% lethal. Yeah.
Got it.
But the good news is there's a lot of people surviving. Like even for age 85, 90% survive.
90%?
Yeah, because it may kill 10% of 85-year-olds and up. But the good news is 90% of over 85 super survive COVID-19.
That's great news. I hadn't seen that data point yet. So having said that there is this interaction between the gut and the immune system, what specifically are the mechanisms by which these gut microbes are affecting, let's say, our risk for a respiratory infection? How could they be modulating that?
So one thing we know about the human coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, version 2, COVID-19, is that it binds our human ACE2 receptors, and it lines our lung and then our guts. There's receptors in the mouth, and it's very abundant in the small intestines. So there are a lot of reports of GI, like diarrhea, pain, constipation. It's affected by this receptor system because of the local effects there. And there are a lot of natural things that actually dock the same receptor system. We don't know if they're super antiviral, but some are. Like one is like citrus, like zest. If you look at hesperidin, that comes from lemon, lime, and other citrus, the zest part. And there are other things as well too. And some are anti-coronavirus. They're also antiviral. So we have a lot of natural products that can come against this, and we probably have been eating them all along. And we see a big divergence. Not everyone gets the cold and flu. During flu season, they don't get the vaccine, and they're totally completely fine. We're seeing the same with the coronavirus, COVID-2 as well. Half of the people are completely asymptomatic, but then they still shed. So kind of like enteroviruses, polio, or other viruses, there's a shedding that may occur in the biological fluids and even in stools. It's detected even 5 weeks out after recovery or asymptomatic stage. It's found in the stools. Our whole body is kind of like in parallel. We know that breast milk isn't sterile. We are feeding our next generation bacteria from mom's poop. They travel up through the lymph, from the gut, through the lymph, into the mastoid tissues, and they get secreted in breast milk. This is how we protect our babies that have zero immune system. They have no antibodies.
It travels from the gut through the gut through the lymph
many years
to the breasts. Really?
Yes. Many years ago, we've discovered that. And that's why breast milk is awesome. There's a lot of carbs in it. It's a low carb food, but these carbs are undigestible by human pancreatic enzymes and our gastric acid. They're for the flora. They're fertilizer for the flora because the baby has no immune system, only mom's immunoglobulins, and the baby is born leaky. This is a good thing. So mom's immunoglobulins can IV through the gut, intravenous, because there's only one cell layer that separates, baby, the gut, small intestines, and the bloodstream. So mom's IgGs go in, protect the baby, and then the mom's building its wealth. I call it the gut profile. If the baby doesn't have bifido, because babies are supposed to be full of bifido, if the baby doesn't have butyrate producers and other protective flora, guess what happens? Baby dies. Despite all the efforts, conception, 9 months carrying this baby, and mom's loaded. She's got iron and all the nutrients to also breastfeed the baby for the next 3 years after that. So its brain will continue to double. It's born with a soft brain, and it will continue to double. And how do we nourish all that and keep the immune system strong so it doesn't die from all the microbes that live on Earth? There are a lot of things hardwired for us, and they're all in parallel. Yeah. It's when we disrupt this, then we get huge deaths, huge flu, pandemics and problems. And we've done that to ourselves, antibiotics, hyperhygiene, super sanitation, Clorox, everything. Never go outside. Don't go into the forest. Don't touch the soil. Don't eat tongue to, fork to farm to fork. Don't support the local farmers.
Maybe we can come back to that point about excessive hygiene. I think that's an important topic we could delve into. So you mentioned the ACE2 and specifically how this COVID-19 is binding to the ACE2. Not all infectious microbes work through that receptor, right? Like do all flu and cold viruses work through the ACE2 receptor, or?
I don't think any do, but I'm not an expert on the flu viruses and other viruses like RSV or metapneumonia or the other common viral viruses that cause cold and flu.
So I have seen
it's very unique.
I have seen some other research showing that, for example, probiotic supplementation can decrease the risk of respiratory infections that are, non-COVID-19 respiratory infections as well. Do you know what mechanisms that might work by, aside from how they may interact with the ACE2 receptor?
Well, I work with a lot of athletes. We work with executives and a lot of really smart moms. We reduce brain fog, body fat, and fatigue in 6 months or less. And with a lot of athletes, they get sick prior to, they've been training or they're in camp, and then they do their event. Sometimes it's an endurance event. They get really ill. There's a lot of probiotics that show protection against flu, upper respiratory infections, asthma, even diarrhea, because of the turning on the adrenaline system. Everything gets loosey goosey. And probiotics help over a lot of it. The studies aren't perfect. Some don't show any benefit. I think it has to do with the dose a little bit. Because again, if our immune system is 80-90% in our gut, just like a poison is dose related, a lot of benefit we're seeing is also dose related with probiotics. And that's why we see even FMT. I don't know if your audience is aware of what FMT is, fecal microbiota transplant. Poop pills or, infusing poop in, it literally saves lives for those who are susceptible to certain infections like Clostridium difficile from a hospital or overuse antibiotics. It literally will save lives, but it has to do with the dose, probably, and the species there.
Mm-hmm. There, you mentioned, I think in passing, there is some specific research around the use of probiotics or certain bacterial strains in the context of specifically COVID-19 or coronaviruses in general.
So there's a number of lactobacilli that were shown for pig coronavirus protection. And many are just common lactobacilli you find in a lot of different probiotics. We have also probiotics. Some of the strains are found in here. Also, L. plantarum is seen to be really helpful. Lactobacillus plantarum is found in sauerkraut, fermented vegetables, so fermented carrots, onions, garlic, kimchi, things like that. They're all around us. We just may not be able to, anchor a lot of it. So studies show engraftment of good probiotics happens. It has to do with the host. And what I see for our clients, because we do gut testing, I really believe in testing, not guessing. A lot of people think they're healthy, but then we pull an organic acid test or a stool kit and they're like, I'm like, wow, I don't even know how you walk around. Like there's a bankruptcy of good gut flora, can't count any bifido in there, no Akkermansia. I call them the ABCs, Akkermansia, and then Bifidobacterium longum, and then butyrate producing Clostridioides. Literally every centenarian that has a microbiome study, they have these all.
What specific gut tests do you like? Because I know there's a variety of them out there, and I've heard many mixed opinions, let's say, on from functional medicine practitioner friends and of mine who say, this test is not valid, that test is not valid, the Viome stuff is nonsense, the ubiome stuff is this, or this test from this company is not valid, or there's different, you can't really gauge it because the amount that's being shed in the feces is not necessarily a great reflection of what's actually going on inside of the gut. And there's various takes on the situation like that. I'm just curious what specific test you prefer, and do you think it's really an accurate reflection of the microbiome, and are there any caveats in how you interpret that finding?
Yeah, actually, I train coaches and clinicians on how to read and interpret and the protocols that go with it. So I totally agree. We're in the sort of dark ages of gut testing. We really want to look at the small intestines, which is, when we look at surface area, that's more than our skin, even it's as large as a tennis court, but it's hard to assess that. So the way I love to assess that is looking at urine, because what gets shed from the small intestines goes into blood, and then we screen it through our kidneys, and so it goes into urine. Also, it's non-invasive. We can do it on children, autistic spectrum, and anytime. We just take the first morning urine, freeze it, ship it in. And it's an amazing organic acid test. I read it with a little more comprehensiveness than even the lab company, Great Plains. When we see even one marker above the 1/5 range for fungal output, so they have 9 markers for fungal output and then 3 markers for oxalates. Oxalates are very important. Oxalates come from our diet, like green leafy kale and smoothies like that, but they also come from mold and fungal overgrowths, which everyone has. And that's a problem with COVID-19 and the progression to ARDS, acute respiratory problems, and pneumonia and death, because there's bacterial overgrowth and fungal overgrowths. That's what kills people. And then the cytokine storm. So we can see that actually on an oat. And actually on my first conference for microbiome medicine, I had 50 practitioners. Everyone got a free oat kit, and we got most of the results back. Everyone had a fucked up oat. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know if I could talk like this, but and then
everyone
digging
had
into the history,
a messed up oat.
Very much, yeah. And the ones that had overcome cancer or 2 or 3 autoimmune problems, they still had a messed up oat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah.
You mentioned something in passing there. You said everyone has fungal or mold overgrowth. I guess I have 2 questions there. If everyone has it, how can it be viewed as abnormal? Is it truly?
It's our norm. I think it's more our norm now because we're in the Western world. I mean, Europeans, to me, don't seem to have as many issues as we do, but we've had antibiotics here 50 years before Europe. And we've had herbicide, pesticides, and glyphosate 50 to 100 years before a lot of other countries have. We have so much deep damage, just like the hyperhygiene and other issues, C-sections, Pitocin. Every Pitocin dose comes with usually an IV antibiotic dose as well. I mean, we have had generations of damage before others, and it shows up. When I used to be a pharmacist, we used to counsel women on their little antibiotic, whatever it was for, like, oh, hey, if you get a yeast infection, I mean, we had to literally warn every woman that got an antibiotic, go talk to your doctor about getting an antifungal, or antifungal care. It's so inherent and common. And when we look at the right studies, it shows the same thing as well. It's always a component. And that it makes it hard to address because fungal cells are eukaryotic like ours. So we used to joke around some of the, best sort of antifungals are also really toxic. Amphotericin is one drug, and we used to call it amphoterrible. Like literally every drug class that's antifungal is also super toxic as well, causing, widespread liver problems, liver failure, and multi-organ problems and other problems. So our cells are so similar. It's hard to have a good approach. That's why botanicals are kind of helpful and good. So it's really great because a lot of antivirals also are antifungal. When a plant, which cannot move around, is trying to defend itself from marauders and pathogens, guess what? A lot of the secondary compounds, or I don't know if you've heard of endophyte fungi that live inside stems and cells and plant cells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're like mycorrhiza. These are like super guardian angels. They also secrete secondary chemical compounds that protect the plant as good as its own cells, but they're often the compounds are antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial at low levels. You don't need a lot. They're very targeted. Low dose goes a long way.
Got it. Is there any other aspect of this gut immune relationship that is worth talking about? One thing
absolutely, yeah.
in
Lifestyle
passing,
changes, yeah, and stress levels. Like When we're stressed, we don't make oxytocin. Guess what? Our gut and our lung epithelium is going to start getting leakier faster. They just like, perforate.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned also something in passing earlier that these bacteria can train our immune system.
Yes.
And I've also heard there's some interesting data I think that's come out on even dead bacteria. Like it may not even be that important whether the bacteria you're consuming, for example, as probiotics, are even alive or not,
Exactly.
and whether they colonize the gut, for example. But even dead bacteria that's consumed can create some effects locally in the gut or in training the immune system. Can you talk about that a bit as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a Russian strain of Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which we were practically 50% Lactobacillus rhamnosus in our Bifida maximus. I tried to emulate a lot of really great formulas out there. And studies show even when it was dead, it had the little like cell membrane parts, or who knows, like other cellular parts inside it. It would stimulate the immune system to improve health, to be resistant against infections, and every manner of health. And some, like, I prefer alive, and that's what some of the studies are when they have like a cell-free supernatant. These are like live bacteria. They're secreting a bunch of a chemical known as antimicrobial peptides, AMPs. These are powerful. But studies are showing even when bacteria are dead, like the Lactobacillus rhamnosus strain I was talking about, some part of the cell wall or other parts of it literally bind to certain parts of our immune system and turn them on in a good way, in a very good way. And we're hardwired to have good bacteria, whether they're dead or alive, to work synchronistically, with our bodies. And we've been like this for millennia, like since the first cell. And our bacteria can do a lot. I don't think it's everything. We have a toxic burden now. People even have metal toxicity or other toxicity. Those all eke away, our resources. I did a keynote for the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. It turns out our cell wall of like a strong probiotic, like our Bifida maximus, a lot of the strains in here were studied. They literally are like resin binders. We have mold issues. People use all these resin binders, charcoal clay things. Literally, the cell walls of Bifido and Lactobacilli strains, like the ones in here, are ionic resins that combine heavy metals. The studies show even they bind glyphosate and herbicides, and they literally will take them out of the system. They bind mycotoxins as well too. So a lot of people who take probiotics, they tell me, wow, like especially ours at a high dose, they feel calm for the first time. If they had mold, they're starting to actually change things, because Bifido literally will bind mycotoxins in vitro in a petri dish and neutralize them, so they're not so toxic.
I've had many conversations on the microbiome and on probiotics, and I've never heard that before. Very interesting.
I'll send you my slides. Yeah, they're fascinating. Our little babies, like when we don't have them, it's literally like a bankrupt wealth portfolio. How is someone going to retire and live and not be homeless, right? You're pretty kind of fucked. And that's like our gut too, our health and our immune system. We can do everything we want, take lots of fiber as well. You can't resurrect what's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what some people's guts are like. They're bankrupt. They may look super healthy on the outside, but if you drill down, they're anxious, they're paranoid, something's off. They've got 3 autoimmune problems still, can't eat whatever foods. I mean, people should be able to eat gluten and dairy. People, like, literally in 2 or 4 weeks after our probiotic, they've reversed half the food allergies.
Wow.
And that's how powerful our immune system is. We're not supposed to have reactions to whatever we eat or put in our mouth. It only happens when there's permeability, hyperpermeability, and the depletion of the good flora that regulate, immune responses. They shouldn't be going, after every little bite of food. They should be calm and happy, right? And digest the food. But when we are depleted of those good flora, there's a lot of problems that happen. Food hyperimmune responses to gluten, dairy, or even like flax or egg whites, right? Egg yolks. These are unnatural.
Mm-hmm.
We can normalize these reactions. It's not that hard at all.
Very, very interesting. So you mentioned something there in passing that I think is worth digging into. You made a distinction between alive bacteria and dead. And I think in the context of even your probiotics, please correct me if my interpretation is wrong, but I think you mentioned that in some of your probiotics, you have some species which are dead and some which are alive. Is that?
Oh, no. We have, we're I love our probiotic. We actually stuffed it 4 to 8-fold higher on a lot of the strains. So at the time of shipping, it's 4 to 8-fold higher than what's stated on the label. There's natural, degradation. Most companies, I'll just let you know, in our industry, usually it's like 0.5 or 1x more, a doubling. Rarely do people go 4x, 8x, to stuff them, because there is loss with travel and shipping and storage.
You're talking about
so these are all
viability of the bacteria, that they're alive, but over time they will die just if they're sitting on a shelf, right?
Right.
Okay. So, but you mentioned something in passing that was a distinguish between alive and dead bacteria. So are you saying that there's some probiotics on the market that are dead bacteria?
Our spore-based are not alive. So if you've heard of Microbiome Labs, they're Megaspore, or Enviromedica, they're TerraFlora. I mean, there's so many fantastic spore-based probiotics, Clostridium butyricum. It's a good Clostridium.
Mm-hmm.
They're spore-based, so they live forever. Like UV light, heat, and cold won't destroy them. Like literally, we find them in the bellies of bees, like who are caught in amber. You can open them up, open their bellies. They've got spore-based probiotics in there, and you can literally bloom them. Like,
wow,
they can come back to life. Yeah.
Okay.
So spores are amazing, but they're not alive, and we can regenerate them in our guts. They make spores and then they bloom. So that goes on throughout the whole GI tract.
So for people who may not understand this, what is a spore? So it's not alive, but it colonizes us, and then does it become alive at that point?
They're like seeds. There are certain kind of bacteria that they kind of lay an egg. It's called a spore, and it's very resistant to everything.
But what does it do? What is that? Does that spore do
So these are probiotics. Spores don't do much, as far as I can tell. I mean, I think I saw 1 or 2 studies. Spores might do something as they're on their way out, but they bloom at some point, and then they become real viable bacteria, like a live probiotic. Yeah, but they're great because you can ship them room temperature, and you can store them forever on a shelf for literally decades and decades and decades with no loss in viability.
Got it. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday on probiotics, Dr. Michael Ruscio, and he breaks things down into 3 different categories. Category 1 is lactobacillus and bifido probiotics. Category 2 is Saccharomyces boulardii, and category 3 is the spore-based probiotics. And he kind of talks about it from the frame of each of those categories has distinct and different benefits, and and recommends, like, he's not saying one is better than the other. He's saying they're all good. They're all useful.
Yeah. There's many categories. There's more than that. Probably, okay. I would say 7. So here's one called Equilibrium. It's 115 strain. It actually has the butyrate producing U bacteria, which is a bigger part. It's part of the bigger part of the Clostridialis that I talked about. So a lot of people with gut issues, they don't make butyrate. You can eat kilos of butter. You won't get enough butyrate. That's a myth. I love bulletproof coffee, but you won't get enough butyrate. You have to get it from your bacteria, and by giving them fertilizer, then they produce it for you.
Okay. So in terms of a practical guide to probiotic supplementation, what do you think are the big principles of how to do that?
Okay. There's probably like three I'd go over. One is there's contraindications. Not every probiotic is good for human, meaning they don't produce benefits. And what I've seen is, because we do massive testing, we do IgG panels, we do OAT panels on people to see really what's going on. And we have different levels of detection compared to the parent labs, actually. And what I see across the board is everyone's got deep dysbiosis. Even every one of my colleagues that I look at their gut problems. Okay. I mean, that's just why they usually go into functional medicine or coaching. They started off with a problem and they wanted to get better. But what I see is there is a lot of strep in people's guts. And when strep is present at toxic pathogenic levels, that means they're depleted for the good stuff. The butyrate producers, the bifido and lacto. And there's actually good bifido and good lacto. Studies show in SIBO, you got the bad lacto and bifido in abundance, and they're in the wrong place and too high of an abundance. They're usually the sugar and starch eating ones. We don't need a massive amount of those. We want actually the mucus eating bifido and lacto, the ones that are right up against our mucosal lining, and they eat fucose, and they eat really gooey kind of cook resistant starches, and they eat mucus, mucin and mucus. So it's a whole different category. It's whole grains. It's the oligosaccharides in whole grains, raffinose oligosaccharides in beans and lentils. I studied for 2 years as an undergrad. So we were trying to GMO it out, but they're actually really important. These oligosaccharides in plants actually end up as being antifreeze, keeps the plants from freezing during all the ice ages. But they're good for our gut. They're gooey and they're like our mucus, and they feed good bifidolacto. When you got overabundance of like bifidoadolescences, bifidoanamolis, and like starch eating ones, you know, the gut's kind of messed up. You can look at a profile. It's just like stock, right? You know, if you look at Walmart stock and you like it, okay, it's doing well, okay, you know, it's good. But if it's not dividend producing, you're bankrupt. You got not so great stock that's actually stealing your money, right? And lowering your overall portfolio, right? So you can look at the gut, and there's like ways to actually look at that. That's what we do for clients, and I'm so grateful we have all these tools available for us. So the first thing is a lot of strep. So cheap probiotics like BSL number 3, they're full of strep, and we see problems with them all the time. Everyone has strep antibodies at some point. Or they have high strep.
Explain what that means for people who might.
Okay, so we can do a neurozoomer, and we can see like how suboptimal people's antibodies are to bad flora in the gut. At one point, I actually had chronic fatigue, and when you dig into the chronic fatigue literature, people with chronic fatigue have very bad guts, and then they also have antibodies to flora in their gut, even the good flora. So antibodies means, you know, they hang around. They're not so necessarily bad. But what studies for chronic fatigue show that if they lowered these antibodies with gut healing modalities like, you know, fiber and probiotics and some zinc, you know, and quercetin, things like that, NAC, just like our antiviral, you know, protocols, they would lower these antibodies. And the degree of lowering these awful antibodies was to the same degree as the improvements in chronic fatigue symptoms and syndrome. And we see this across every condition, like whether it's inflammatory bowel disease or Hashimoto's or cancer, okay? So we can check anti-strep antibodies. Cyrex Labs offers it, Neurozoomer offers it, but I have a different, you know, a lot of people don't check the total IgGs either. If someone's immunocompromised, like a lot of our gut dysbiosis people, even the immunoglobulins are lowered and you have to calibrate it. Some labs will do it for you, like Neurozoomer will do it for free if you ask for it. So a lot of people have these like low levels that shouldn't even be there of anti-strep antibodies. They also have, we do a cheap panel called IgG from Great Plains. Everyone has Saccharomyces antibodies, either low levels, which is suboptimal, or really high levels.
Saccharomyces cerevisiae?
Cerevisiae, but there's cross-reactivity, right? Just like if someone's allergic to gluten, do you go feed all day? Or even like barley, which has some gluten in it? No, right? No one should be taking Aspelarity. I don't care what the fucking studies say. In our patient population who have these elevations, which is nearly everyone now, like it's literally everyone. Unless you test, you don't know. So, you know, I know there's good studies with Aspelarity. It's even antifungal. I think it's kind of BS. They're not the patient population that we currently see in functional medicine that are pretty ill at many, many levels. And I'll eventually see triggering for people who are on these products. I had one IBD client, I didn't know he was taking it.
Specifically Saccharomyces boulardii.
I feel like it, yeah, and it depends on the dose. And same with strep too. There's a lot of strep lozenges. There's strep, really high dose. It's the number 1 ingredient in DSL number 3. You see a lot of people trigger for eczema and other skin disorders and other things. And initially they felt better because for once they finally got good bifidolacto at a high enough dose. Like literally, we'll do 1 trillion of this a day and we see amazing shifts if they can tolerate it, but not everyone can tolerate it. Sometimes when they have anti-strep antibodies, they may even have anti-lactobacilli antibodies. That's a small percentage of our practice.
Got it.
Because people are really ill.
And it's strep, what species?
Stradivarius is a probiotic. Thermophilus is the most common one. It's a super cheap dietary probiotic found in yogurts and probiotics that are probably a little substandard. But inferior in my opinion.
It's a common species that is found in the oral microbiome. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't need a lot. If you have like an immune reaction to it, you just don't want a lot of it to get triggered until your body's healed and the immune system is calmed down. We can check IgGs to look at what the immune system is what's going on. We can also check a CytoDX test now. It looks at cytokines like IL-1, IL-2, IL-10, IL-6, and TNF alpha. It's really great to check all these if people are interested in doing it.
Now, are there any safe strategies as far as probiotic use that are pretty much, with few exceptions, safe across the board for most people?
Everyone's really different, yeah, and their immune tolerance is different. So I'd say it's really hard. You want to try low dose of something and then gradually up it, if there's no problems. You don't have to test everything. Sometimes if the IgGs are low, total IgGs are low, it's hard to see really kind of what's going on unless you just test it out, right? Yeah.
Okay.
The
So,
second
but
thing,
like
yeah,
the lactobacillus and bifido species, for example, are, I mean, like a probiotic based on those species is not going to be, let's say, almost universally beneficial. You're going to see like
they
50,
should
50, like
be.
50% of people are going to,
Oh
respond
no,
badly or
like
something like
80,
that.
90% tolerate really, really well.
Okay.
But like there's a lot of keto leaders I've looked at their guts. Some can't tolerate a probiotic. They can't tolerate any probiotic. They may poop blood or green mucus. They're triggered. Yeah,
Do you
they
find
have to look at more what's going on with the immune system
do you find
and
that
co-infections.
keto diets are reliably messing up people's gut microbiome?
If they're not messing up the gut microbiome, they're definitely messing up adrenals without carb cycling.
Hmm. Got it.
Doing
Um,
CrossFit with fasting is one of the worst ways to ruin adrenals and lower total testosterone.
mhm.
Once you lower total testosterone, you're fucking your gut. You cannot be anabolic enough to regrow your gut. We regrow our gut every 72 hours.
Explain that. So explain the link between testosterone and anabolism and how that relates to gut health.
So there's an Australian study that came out a few years ago, and they were looking at testosterone. They took really healthy young, like German dudes, like they were age 18 to 40 or something, and they injected them with a bunch of really low dose, zero 0.8 nanograms of LPS. LPS is lipopolysaccharide. It's a cell wall of really nasty gram-negative bacteria that tend to overgrow when we have a depletion of good stuff. They instantly saw within 6 hours a really big drop in their testosterone. But they're really healthy dudes, within a few hours, everything like normalized again. What I see in men, like a lot of them report to me, they look really healthy on the outside, but no morning wood. And some of my friends, my guy friends have said like, oh my God, none of the guy friends they know under age 40 have morning wood every day, persistently every day, like a healthy, dude. But when we heal the gut, we do even the antivirals, because a lot of them are antifungal, they're good gut protocols. And then we do really good probiotics and some anti-inflammatories. Within a week, everyone's morning wood is back again.
Hmm.
Yeah, we also do a little bit of estrogen blockers. When there's a lot of stress in the system, in the gut, it causes aromatase to go nuts. So people also are converting for men, the T into a lot of estrogens that they don't want. Some of these estrogens are carcinogenic. Like you can check it on a Dutch, like 4-OHE1, 16-OHE1. We see all of these cut in half or completely normalized with gut protocols.
Interesting. So take me through, having said this is personalized based on a person's testing, what does this approach look like to gut healing? If you could kind of map out a general framework of how you do this.
So we teach the 3 R's at the Gut Institute. One is you have to look at root issues. Everyone's root issues are different. Some people worked at a dry cleaner, so they got tons of chemicals on board, or they worked on a golf course, so they got tons of herbicides. Everyone's toxic burden is a bit less. So other people have gotten the flu shot every freaking year, and they're just full of heavy metals, and maybe they have 1 or 2 fillings as well. So everyone's root issue is kind of different. Some people have just genetic SNPs. They've had a perfect diet, but they have every genetic variant for the gut and for calcification of oxalates. So they're pretty congested, and all their meridians and terrain is all calcified. So everyone's root issue is kind of different. We kind of look at that, the genetic blueprint. I know you like blueprints, so like genetic blueprint. Yeah, look at the mitochondria, because our microbiome literally is our mitochondria. Right? Mitochondria used to be bacteria, gut bacteria, rickettsia. Second is to recolonize the terrain. Nobody has good terrain. Not even me. I still slip, when I'm eating too much, not great food and not working out. So everyone, recolonizing. That's a constant, thing. Like if you have SNPs, and then it's something you have to work on, right? Or if you had a lot of antibiotics. My dad's a surgeon. We got every antibiotic growing up, like 20 million. So I've had problems, for a while, and that recolonization
because your dad's a surgeon, he was just throwing out antibiotics everywhere.
Every fever, every sniffle, every cold, and yeah, I mean, he thought he was doing the best. So, but my parents are super healthy. Like he's on the front line, still working. He's 80.
Wow, great.
No COVID-19 for him. Yeah. But my siblings and I, we all developed an autoimmune problem. All 4 of us.
Wow.
At a very young age. Yet my parents are super healthy. They grew up dirt poor, licking dirt off of every surface and no running water, no toilets. So recolonizing is really important. You have to look at fermented foods and diet, prebiotics, probiotics. The third is resetting the rhythms. So many people, I talk to them, their body temps are like 95.0. There's no way you're going to eradicate a virus at a body temp of 95.0. We are mammals, and 98.6 Fahrenheit or even higher, like certain dogs I know, and even higher, because that's where we shed the great majority of pathogenic microbes. Our bodies kept that, not just metabolism, that energy blueprint, but it's also to keep the microbes away and to keep our fetuses strong. So that rhythm is really important. So looking at the Dutch, looking at 24-hour cortisol, looking at metabolized cortisol, looking at testosterone for men. For women, we look at progesterone.
Got it. Are there any probiotics, for example, any probiotics that you sell under your brand that you would recommend to people listening to this, without hesitation, even if they haven't been tested for anything, or does everything revolve around the testing?
No, I'm pretty agnostic to probiotics. I think they're all fantastic. Just, unless you're healed, stay away from S. boulardii and strep containing probiotics. But Bifidobacter maximus is a really great value. Like, it has millions of doses. Like, if you were only interested in 20 billion a day, it's got millions of doses in here and it lasts forever. For those who need more, like, it's almost like an FMT when they can do 5 scoops a day, like really healing to do a higher dose. But it's good to get variety. Like, I call it the probiotic parade. We put all our clients on it. And it's rotating out different probiotics. Once you've gotten in a probiotic daily for about a week or two, you can start rotating it, once or twice a week. Studies appear to show, they'll stay anchored if there's, regular normal diets.
What does dosing look like? Because, there are probiotics on the market that are everything from like 100 million CFUs, colony forming units, to, 40 or 100 billion.
So spore-based probiotics tend to be like that. They're more like 400, 500 million, not even close to a billion, right? Or they're like 1 billion. Because when you look at the profile, like, we don't have a lot of bacilli, spore-based Clostridium in our gut. They're all under 0.5%, 0.1%. But when we talk about Akkermansia, when we talk about Bifido and Lacto, we're looking at, and the Eubacterium that's in here. So Eubacterium and other butyrate producers, they're up to 50% of our gut. And then for Bifido and Lacto, they're more like 1% or less. And then we look at Akkermansia, it really, for a healthy person and for like longevity people, centenarians who are chronic disease-free and cancer-free, they'll see numbers of 1 to 5% of the whole profile. We don't have a probiotic yet, but you can do inulin and a lot of gooey probiotics, fiber and prebiotics. You can grow Akkermansia pretty easily.
Very nice. So again, which specific supplements under your brand?
We have something called Bifidobacter maximus, and then we have a couple bundles so people can like do a parade. Yeah, I mean, studies with all the probiotics that are in the gut. Another one is known as Bacteroides. We don't have probiotic with that right now, but Bifido and Bacteroides, they're an ecosystem. They self-feed each other when there's not enough mucus around, or maybe between meals. They even secrete something known as EPS, exopolysaccharides, on the outside of their cell membranes. So they can literally feed other bacteria in the gut, even if we're not eating all the time to feed them.
Very nice.
Amazing to look at the ecosystem of the gut, because that's how it can give us the best resilience, I feel, during this COVID-19 time.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, could you wrap up maybe with 3 big sort of key takeaways of everything that you've covered, like the 3 things you want to leave people with as far as gut health and immune health, and especially in the context of this COVID-19 stuff?
Absolutely. So first is, keep your hormones strong, like do the proper adrenal things, laugh with your friends, even see them on Zoom. I think our mental health is so important, not being hard on ourselves, loving ourselves, even our shadows, right? Because any negative thoughts, even about what's going on, will impact our gut. The microbiome won't like it. Second is movement. I mean, we're not totally stuck in our houses yet. Get out, breathe in a couple the air forests, because you'll, get great antidepressants, but you also get soil bacteria there. You don't need a probiotic. Literally, you'll save hundreds of dollars. Just go breathe in some forests and green areas. And then third, I mean, just look at the gut. There are a lot of I did a series on Facebook, so I'll send you the link. But there's so much we can do to have great regulation of our antiviral defenses during this time. We might need it all. Half of the people are asymptomatic with exposure. It's a super contagious virus. Not very lethal, compared to other pandemics, but super, infectious. And half of the people are super, asymptomatic, no signs or symptoms at all, but they're shedding. So social isolation, that distancing is kind of important. But the other half get symptoms, and they may be hacking their lungs out. They may be progressing to respiratory failure and just having even permanent lung damage with no prior lung issues. Like, this is something that's going to stay with some people, just like we have other viruses that stay in our systems that wax and wane, like Epstein-Barr. Really important gut and viral defenses is really important. That's what we do. We do a lot of that to lower chronic activation of many viruses, CMV, HHV6, parvo, even HSV1 and 2. I mean, like, every virus out there starts to become a problem when we lose our firewall. So people have had antibiotics and hyperhygiene. If you've lost your firewall, you need to consider these things. Not just, you're not going to probably die from COVID-19, but it's those other things. So there are different things people can do. That one thing is SPM resolvins. These are lipid mediators. They come in a supplement form. A lot of NFL and other athletes have been using it for a while because they help recovery of all injuries, like, really quick. They also help for asthma and pulmonary disease, and also viral and secondary bacterial infections and other things. So we use it in all our our clients actually. When we're in a parasympathetic nervous tone, we make a lot of resolvins. And when we're stressed or worried, we don't. Meditation, prayer, and all that are awesome because they will increase that concentration. People in chronic pain have very low levels of resolvins in their body. You can take all the omega-3 you want. You won't make. It's supposed to convert from EPA, DHA, omega-3, but people aren't going to convert when they're in a stress situation. You can also be in a stress situation when your gut's kind of messed up. So that's when I think testing and not guessing is super helpful. Or take one of our classes, to get the gut a little healthier. But resolvins are really helpful. They're shown to really abort a lot of this progression to cytokine storm or respiratory failure. And they're really safe, they're very anti-inflammatory, almost no contraindications I can find with them. They're really awesome.
Wonderful.
So you can check it out.
Wonderful. Dr. Liu, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge with my audience. If somebody wants to work with you or follow your work, where's the best place to reach out to you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm at thegutinstitute.com. Just reach out to me there. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Dr. Liu.
Thanks, Ari.
Hey there, this is Ari again. One more quick thing before you go. Just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Energy Blueprint, and also make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or anything else. I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I will see you again next week.